As a way to begin this morning, I have one small suggestion, humble suggestion, for making it through these holiday days with our sanity intact and at least a measure of goodwill toward other people. I'd like to suggest a mantra that we try to use as a way to begin the day, perhaps, and maybe more important, as a way to help us decide how to behave when the going gets rough and the holidays begin to get the better of us. Having a mantra isn't anything new, I know. If the writer of the scripture that Krista just read would have shared with us a mantra, it would have been this: live each day as if it were your last day, which is a pretty good mantra to get us through and to keep our priorities straight. But this mantra is a little different. I've heard of African American mothers urging their children, especially their sons, to use this mantra when they find themselves in trouble, not of their own making. I've also heard this mantra, and you all have too, if you've had the good fortune of seeing the recent production of The Lion King. You might remember it. That one moment when Simba finds himself running away from the pride and from all that there was for him to do there as he had come of age. Rafiki leads Simba to the quiet pool of water where his own image turns into the image of his father Mufasa. And the father tells his son in his best James Earl Jones voice, "Remember who you are. Remember who you are." Remember who you are when the $20 bill falls out of the purse of the woman crossing the street in front of you. Remember who you are when it comes time to punish one of the children. Remember who you are when someone chooses you to share some bad news with. Remember who you are. Look into Rafiki's pool to see your parents and your siblings back in the day. Your parents, how they were there for you, how they sculpted you, how they shaped your story. And others in your family who were there when your parents couldn't be there. Remember who you are. Look into Rafiki's pool to see that one teacher, or maybe there were two, who made all the difference in your life without ever really knowing it. Look into the pool long enough to see the friend, or maybe the cousin, you were able to confide in when you were too scared to tell anyone else. Look into the pool and let your story, the glorious story of who you are, bubble up to the surface. And then go ahead and do the most important thing any of us ever does. After we have remembered who we are, we get to decide, with each choice we make, who we will be. Sometimes those decisions are small decisions, like letting that family of 4, with kids giving their parents all they could handle, step in front of you at the grocery store, even though you're in a hurry. Other times, the decisions about who we will be are of more consequence. And with that as an introduction, I'd like to invite Tori to the pulpit. Last summer, you may remember, Tori had one of those opportunities to decide who she was going to be. She took off for Chicago to enter seminary and pursue a ministry that was just beginning to come into focus. The paint wasn't even dry yet. And that choice gave her an opportunity to look into the pool, to look at who you have been, Tori, to let that story help you discover what might be next. And so this morning, we would be delighted if you could tell us just a little bit about all of that.
For those of you who might not already know, this fall I've I began pursuing a Master of Divinity at the University of Chicago, with the ultimate goal of becoming ordained in the Disciples of Christ Church. Now, the Disciples are the only denomination at UChicago that supports their seminarians with full funding and housing. And this, like so many other aspects of the Disciples community, make me feel so honored for everything that I get to represent and live into. The Disciples Divinity House where I live has its own chapel and library, and it is a hub for community meals, discussions, and spontaneous sing-alongs around the community piano. So far, my 20 housemates and I even get along well enough to overcome the fact that we are stressed out grad students who share one kitchen with no dishwasher. Beyond the community I have at the house, I belong to a tight-knit cohort of 19 people who began the MDiv program together this fall. Among us, there are Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and Jews. In addition to the Greek, Bible, and religion classes I took, I met with my cohort weekly for a class on ministry. Our very first assignment was to write a chapter of our spiritual autobiographies to share with one another. You have all been such a supportive part of my own spiritual journey. And I don't just mean all those amazing cards and care packages you sent to me in Chicago. So when Wick asked me to speak this morning, I thought what better thing to share than a chapter of my spiritual autobiography from the time that preceded my time at Christian Temple. Here goes. I don't remember first learning the words to the Lord's Prayer, but I do remember the acrylic carpet that left its imprint on my knees during Friday night worship in my grandparents' living room. I remember how our Father who art in heaven made the air thick and sacred as we spoke the prayer in unison. I remember the peace of shared reverence in a familiar place. We would begin family worship at the exact moment of sundown to usher in the week's day of rest. The time of Friday's sunset was always printed in the previous week's bulletin. I grew up a fourth-generation Seventh-day Adventist in Denver, Colorado. Adventism is an insular denomination. The parents and grandparents of my childhood best friends grew up together in the same church where I was baptized. My family went to church every Saturday, where I attended Sabbath school and took solace in the belief that Jesus is coming back very soon. We took communion in the sanctuary once a quarter, and after receiving the elements, we descended to the church basement to wash one another's feet over our nylons. My parents took me to the church's annual lecture series on Revelation, where we were instructed to beware the mark of the beast. Sabbath dinner began every week at noon and was shared with family and friends. Mozart would play quietly over the stereo as we passed around casseroles with recipe names like Voice of Prophecy or Food for the Gods. I diligently studied my Bible, hoping at that moment that I finally became saved, I would be able to feel the difference. I have always been full of questions, and the teachings of Seventh-day Adventism gave rise to many. I wondered, how tall were Adam and Eve before they were sent from the Garden of Eden? How many days will it take us to fly to heaven together once Jesus comes? Why can't girls grow up to be pastors? And why is the thought of living with God forever in heaven so scary? To these questions, there were always answers. Adam and Eve were 18 and 15 feet tall, respectively. 6 days to fly to heaven, so that we'll be there by the Sabbath. Girls can't be pastors because the Bible says so. And if the thought of living forever is so scary, why don't you try to pray some more? I did pray more, but I was never sure it was working. I yearned for the scripted prayers and practice of confession that I had read about in books about Catholics. Instead, I approximated some of the rituals by making a bi-weekly confession to my mother as she did the dishes. I'm sorry for everything, I said, to soothe the guilt of existence. We were a church community held together by shared love as much as by shared fear. Nevertheless, I experienced belonging through a common religious heritage, and I observed how the church can be a force for good by serving the needs of the surrounding community. Even though many of my questions about God remained unanswered, I wanted to be a part of the church's work, and I was 16 when I first had the idea to go into ministry. But as my maturing questions about God became unwelcome in the church, so did my maturing female identity. I was 17 when I stopped attending my childhood church because I could not reconcile Christ's teachings with Adventism's ban on women's ordination. I could no longer believe that a childless, unmarried woman had no place in the kingdom of God. I could no longer believe that God wanted me to live in fear. Fear of questioning the Bible, fear of the end times, fear of my own potential. When I arrived at Christian Temple a year and a half ago, I felt welcomed into the shared life I had long been seeking. And with my new experience of faith community came new questions. How do you embrace change while preserving an identity formed by traditions of the past? What, after all, makes for a good life? These are the questions I carried with me through the doors of the church and now into the classrooms at Divinity School. I'm quickly learning that there are no easy answers to the questions raised by a mature faith, if there are answers at all. I can't help but look back to my childhood church as I stand at the start of this new journey. The prayer I learned as a child has taken on new meaning for me since the Sabbaths in my grandparents' living room. There we prayed together to beckon Jesus' second coming and to ward off the fear that perhaps we might not make it to heaven after all. I still often feel afraid about many different things, but I choose now to seek solace not in doctrine and false certainty, but in the vast love of God and in the support of the global faith community. I still recite that prayer, but I do it instead to favor and savor the blessing of this earthly and embodied life, the blessings of family, of bread, of the freedom to wrong and to forgive, and of the grace that transcends all things. Until thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. This is the story I shared in my class several weeks ago. And since then, I've continued to wrestle with how to understand my past in relation to the life and ministry I want to have. We tell the story of Christ because it has the power to save us. The story of Christ's death and resurrection has the power to heal our human condition, one that leaves us estranged from God and from one another. I can't help but wonder, do our own life stories, made in the image of God, have the power to heal us too? In the past months, in the midst of new friends and a new place, I realized that I've been telling my own story in a way that harms me. I've told myself the story that I'm all alone in having to take care of myself, and that I have to be accomplished and infallible before I am worthy of love. I know this isn't the story God would have for me, but I didn't realize it was the story I had for myself until I started telling it. I believe God calls us to be a part of his grand story, and one way we do this is by sharing who we are with one another. So thank you all for letting me share a little bit more this morning about who I am, and thank you for the continuous support along my journey.
It is a delight to indeed hear the story of someone else. And I think one of the things it helps us do is to remind us of how healing it can be and how important it can be for us to review the story of our own lives, to think about where we first experienced God, to think about how family and our early communities helped make us feel safe, to think about those times when we did, all of us in this room, reject the faith of our origin before we were able to grasp and find a new identity and a new faith. And then also to think about the way the community that we experience now, the community we call the church, can make that story new and fresh. And so we invite all of you to do that over the course of this Advent season. For indeed, we believe in the story of a person who is Jesus the Christ. And that story has made so much difference in this world and in our own lives. So we come to a time now where we invite anyone who